Sewing stretchy fabrics can be intimidating at first, but once you figure out the right settings for your machine, you can sew them confidently. Today, I'll be sharing my best tips for how to ditch the wavy, stretched out seams that will happen when your settings aren't right. Hi, I'm Adrienne from Sew PDF, and for the last 5 years, I have been designing and marketing PDF sewing patterns. I have noticed that pattern instructions can be overwhelming for new sewers, or even experienced sewers trying a new fabric or technique. My goal is to make sewing easy and fun. So the first thing I want to talk about isn't technically a setting, but sometimes all the settings won't be enough if you don't have the right presser foot. Now the right presser foot will actually vary depending on your model of sewing machine. I actually have 2 Janome sewing machines, and one of them sews knits perfectly with a regular pressing foot, and the other one needs a walking foot. So here is a walking foot. This fancy contraption is actually much easier to use than it looks. You simply screw it to the presser bar, which is the metal shaft that goes up and down when you sew, in place of the regular presser foot holder. And make sure that this arm here is resting on the needle bar. So first you're going to take off the regular foot holder. Unscrew that. And that's the actual presser foot and the presser foot holder that need to come off. And then you make sure the little arm goes above the needle bar. And put those claws onto the presser bar. And screw that on. And tighten it with a screwdriver. So the walking foot's purpose is to feed the fabric through evenly. It has these upper feed dogs, these little plastic white bits with teeth ridges in it, that move with each stitch as the bar goes up and down, and grip the top fabric and help move it through. For stretchy fabrics, this extra grip helps to prevent the fabric from stretching as it moves through. This foot is also very helpful with slippery and bulky fabrics of all types. There is also another, less common presser foot that works in a similar way to help grip the fabric and move it through. It's called a knit foot, and here's what it looks like. Now, I have not actually had any luck finding a knit foot that fits my Janome sewing machine. This is a Baby Lock brand knit foot that my husband picked up from a local shop for me. I believe it was a floor sample. It was out of the packaging and they weren't sure what it was for. And I've since realized that it's actually missing the teeth that are supposed to be in this middle section right here that grab onto the fabric in the same way as a walking foot. So this bar, when it moves up and down, moves this middle section here that's supposed to have some teeth on it that are not on it. As it turns out, the missing teeth didn't really matter, as this knit foot didn't fit my Janome machines anyways, and most universal feet don't fit Janome machines either. There are many kits of universal feet that can be purchased that include a knit foot with them. And if you have a machine that it will fit, it's definitely a good tool to have. My friend Marta loves and uses hers all the time, and she recorded a clip of hers in action so you can see what it looks like. So let's get into the settings, which can also greatly affect how much your fabric is stretched as it moves through. The main one, which most machines will have, is the presser foot pressure dial. When sewing with knits, you would want to lower the presser foot pressure until the fabric stops coming out wavy. Here are 2 samples of rib knit sewn on one of my machines with the presser foot pressure high and low. You can clearly see the difference. Now, not all machines will have the ability to adjust the presser foot pressure, so it's important to check your manual and see if that is a feature that your machine has. Your machine might even have a less common setting designed to help with this, such as the feed balancing dial on my favorite machine. I can't actually find any info on how this works, and I suspect it may be just another term for presser foot pressure, maybe with some additional settings combined with it. But my manual clearly shows that it helps to control the rate the fabric moves through in order to avoid any stitch distortion. And a drawn out stitch, as shown in my manual, would definitely stretch the fabric out of shape as well. I've never actually needed to adjust this dial, as this machine is the one that has always sewn knits for me perfectly without a walking foot. Suffice it to say, if you ever see a Janome DC 3050 for sale at a good price, I would jump on that. Now on to the tension setting. I have personally never needed to adjust the tension from the standard setting of 4 for sewing knits. And actually, my DC 3050 has an auto setting that self-adjusts the tension in most conditions. Seriously, there's a reason it's my favorite. But it's possible that with a really heavy knit, you may need to lower the tension. There should be no need to raise the tension, and if your stitches are loose on the bottom, which generally indicates that there is little to no tension on the upper thread, it's more likely that your upper thread has slipped out of the tension disc and needs to be rethreaded. Finally, we have the stitch setting itself. In order to sew knits without stretching the fabric out of shape, you typically need a longer stitch length. When I use a straight stitch on knits, which isn't very often, and I'll explain why in a few seconds, I raise the stitch length from the standard 2.2 or 2.4 to at least a 3 length. However, while the long straight stitch is effective for eliminating wavy seams, it's not a stretch stitch, and it's likely to break when the seam is stretched while pulling the clothing on and off. There is a large variety of actual stretch stitches to choose from, such as zigzag, triple stitch, lightning bolt, and even many decorative stitches. So I've created another entire video comparing these stitches that you can watch next. Stay tuned for a link to that. One last thing that I'd like to mention is that if you still have a tiny bit of waviness coming out, don't panic. A small amount of waviness is 100% fixable just with a steam press or even by throwing it in the wash. Heat and moisture will actually take those fibers that have been spread apart by your stitches and relax them back into place. Thanks for watching, and if you're interested, check out this video about the different stretch stitches.